Australian Survivor Redemption episode 6 released, and let's talk about it. In the last episode, we had Harry go out 7-1 to 1, the first veteran player to leave the game, and of course, Caleb was there. When the episode starts, it starts with Caleb going back to the Baron tribe, and he just spills everything. And being the idiot that he is, doesn't realize is that Brooke and Mark are over there, also veteran players, and he's just like, yeah, we took out a big player, like, we need to take out the big players again. Like, I just don't know if he has a brain. I just don't know. Like, he frustrates me so much. I just can't. Like, it just feels like he tries so hard to be a character, and he just, like, sucks at it. I just don't want to watch him, to put it that way. I just don't want to watch him. I just don't care about him. He just, like, frustrates me. But shifting over to the bounty tribe, we get Simon's perspective, and he's just like, yeah, I kind of sucked, but I really needed to like work with Lottie to stay strong, blah 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 blah. Like, he was just like very controlled on this, right? However, things get a little more interesting because for some reason Aisha isn't really that attached to Lottie anymore. Like, you thought that it would be Lottie, Aisha, and Cameron that are like working side by side together, but it's like Aisha, I think it might be choosing Cameron over Lottie now, because I thought Aisha and like Lottie were like this, but it doesn't seem like that anymore. And so there's a potential future fracture that is going to happen. And we'll get into that a bit later. It might not even matter by the next episode, to be honest here. But going back to the Baron tribe, because today they are the main characters, this episode is all about Mark versus Johnson versus the idea of taking another move is the way to put it. So it looks like Mark and Johnson's rivalry of Big Brother versus Survivor is going to happen. They're going head to head pretty much. Like, it's been building up all the way into episode 6. And so Johnson is like feeling a bit uncomfortable that he goes and talks to Mark, and Johnson's like, yeah, we just need to work together. And Mark just doesn't buy it. Like, Mark is like, he plays Big Brother. He knows how to get people going and how to talk to people and get them on his side. So I need to take out Johnson. But also, we have finally a new character on the Baron tribe really introduced now, and his name is Tez. And Mark thinks that he has Tez wrapped around his finger as like a guy that can give information to Mark the entire time. But we'll see why that isn't necessarily the case in the future. Now, let's get into the reward challenge. The reward challenge, it was fun. It was like wrestling, shooting people off the platform, and it was whatever. But also, Bounty Tribe has always suffered, and they turned out the win. They really needed this win to get some nachos in them. And it just essentially healed them, right? So there wasn't much happening in that regard. Like, okay, the Bounty Tribe got to enjoy their nachos, and it's all of that, right? However, Don is getting a little frustrated. He's like, bro, I should have been on the slingshot. I should have been doing that, Mark. He like pulls Mark aside after he loses the reward challenge, and he's like, dude, what the heck? Like, you kind of sucked at that challenge. And Mark's like, I really appreciate you putting your opinion in, because, it's important to get your opinion out. It's just so backhanded, but I love it. I love this, like, pettiness. I also love how Don just, like, crashes out because he thinks he's, like, the true absolute solution for a tribe to perform well or not. And, like, it's so funny how Mark has to remind Don of like, hey, did you know that like the pre-merge stage of Survivor is all about team collaboration to win immunity challenges? Like, if Don is so individual, maybe he should have played Big Brother, but here we are. Yeah, it's funny to me. Like, Don, as much as he's like frustrating on the strategy side, he's really an unintentionally funny character, and I love that about him, and I hope that he never changes throughout the entire season. But the Baron tribe gets a little more interesting. So a plan is starting to be set in motion. And now in the prior episodes, we had Faith and Keely working together. They were like minor characters, but you kind of saw as a viewer that the editors were starting to build them up, and it wasn't just quite the time. But now is the episode where they feel like they can start making their move against Mark. As much as they like Mark and his alliance, Faith and Keely see that, like, maybe they're just numbers and maybe that's not enough to, like, actually secure a win in the game. They're kind of worried that, like, if they were to hit the merge, that Mark is going to have, like, a godfather position, just tell people what to do, and they just follow suit. Something that we kind of saw in Australian Survivor hero versus villains, and I don't think they want to see that same mistake happen again with veteran players, right? They want to form kind of like almost like an all women's alliance while including some guys in there, but like their core alliance is all women, of course. So they actually pull in Sally. So Sally is like a bit hesitant because her name was written down in the first tribal, and looking at the Wikipedia for the first tribal, that's the tribal where Kat went home with a 7-2 to 1 vote. And Sally received a vote from Blanche. And Blanche hasn't been a big character at all, but she's worried that because she got 1 vote at that tribal council, can she really trust Faith and Keely to tell her the information that she needs? I think they do a good job of convincing Sally to come to their side, but we don't really get to see this evolve until after the immunity challenge. Shifting the perspective to the bounty tribe really quick, because there were strategy conversations. So on a hammock, we had Lottie, Cameron, Aisha, and Jackson on a hammock. And they kind of feel like the tribe is actually surprisingly a lot more unified because they got rid of Harry. They don't have to worry about such power players. But we're starting to see kind of like a core 4 alliance. Lottie also is kind of aware of how wishy-washy Aisha is as well. But before we get into that conversation in particular, they were like, who do we vote out? Like, we're in such a good spot. I don't know who we could vote out. And so they kind of come to this like joking consensus that it should be Lyndall. It kind of brings up my past points about Lyndall as a player. She's way too risky. Like, I can see her taking calculated risk because I say that she's a cat with 9 lives. She won that immunity. She literally dodged a bullet by basically throwing Eliza under the bus. It's interesting how she's able to dodge votes. However, I think her 9 lives are running out. Now, we'll have to see in the future because that's definitely going to change given the upcoming episode here. I just don't see her being in a good spot. She really needs to make merge so then she can start playing the game well. But at the moment, she's just not a good game player, and it's just always going to be the next guaranteed target unless somebody wants to make a blindside. Like, basically what I'm talking about here, on the first episode, Daniel goes out. He was blindsided, 11-1. Not that crazy of a blindside. Lyndall was supposed to go out in episode 3, but threw Eliza under her bus, and then it was an 8-3 vote. Lyndall was also supposed to go out, but Lottie wanted to take a shot at Harry and cause a blindside by sending Paula home at 7-2 to 1. And then Lyndall was supposed to go out in episode 5 and won immunity, and Harry went out 7-1 to 1. I'm telling you, Lyndall should have already been home, but here we are. I'm only saying that she's taking calculated risk and not a good game because of situations like this. Her social game is just shot. Her strategic game is perfectly timed. So, like, her strategy level is off the chart for sure, but her social game is, like, in debt, and she needs to work on it. But her physical game, she won that immunity challenge, so she could be a much bigger threat in the future, but, she needs to make merge. But this is where I think Lyndall can dodge yet again another tribal council elimination. And that's with the conversation with Lottie and Simon. Lottie kind of like basically stole Simon from Harry, pretty much made the move against Paula, then took out Harry, and now Simon just wants to work with Lottie. He recognizes that Lottie is probably the strongest newbie on this cast. And no shade to Baron, but they need to go to more tribal councils. But we've seen Lottie for basically 6 episodes now have a literal death grip on Bounty. It's crazy. But on the flip side, game recognizes game. Lottie sees Simon playing probably the best game he has ever played. Simon had a little bit of a messy moment in the 6 episodes. He's playing very pulled back. He's not trying to like make the big move because he's learned from the past 2 seasons that if you try to like play big, well, you're the one that's going to be sacrificed. Again, referencing the Survivor Heroes versus Villain Tribal specifically, where Simon basically got clowned on. He's learned from that and he wants to correct the mistakes. And Lonnie's like, you are playing the best possible game you could be right now. And I want to work with that. I trust you a lot, Simon. We could really see a power duel thrive when two threats don't find each other threatening and instead want to be allies to get to a further place, regardless if it's the end or not. Damage is going to be done. Now, we have to see more of what this means, but Lottie pitched out that Aisha is not really the most beneficial ally and is starting to sense in her gut that Aisha might be shifting away from her ideologies and way of thinking in this game. So there's not much on it, but Simon agrees, and in future episodes, I guess we'll see if a new rivalry is going to form between Lottie and Aisha. And also, where would Cameron stand? Is Cameron actually going to follow suit with Lottie? Or is Cameron going to follow suit with Aisha? I think if I had to place a bet, Cameron would probably pick Aisha. But we get into the immunity challenge. It's a very collaborative immunity challenge. It was really exciting. They like jump in the water, they grab all their stuff, like the boxes, they throw it on the ground, and then they have to like do this like zigzag balance beam with like things that they have to hold. I can happily say that Bounty is no longer a disaster tribe. They actually won an immunity. Bounty finally gets to send Baron to tribal council on a double loss. They lost the reward challenge with the nachos, and they lost the immunity challenge. So now they have to make their tribe of 11 down to a tribe of 10. Oh, let's get into this tribal council. So I'm just going to go ahead and combine the tribal council and the strategy portion. Honestly, the strategy portion was a lot more interesting. So it is one alliance versus another alliance, right? But there's also an emerging third alliance that's sneaking up and trying to cause a sucker punch on one of these alliances here. So let's state the obvious. Mark's alliance with Dawn, Caleb, and Tez is versing Johnson, Ben, and Blanche. It leaves a lot of players in the middle. It leaves Faith and Keely as the emerging alliance that want to cause a sucker punch on Mark. They pull in Sally, and Sally's like, you know what? I'm gonna trust this. I'm gonna risk my game, even if I don't really know their intention. I got that one vote on the 2nd episode of Survivor. You know what? Screw it. I'm here to play the game. I want to make a big move. And so they're like, who do we talk to? And they're like, okay, obviously, we don't talk to Mark. We don't talk to Dawn. And we definitely don't talk to Caleb, because right now we can make a move on all 3 of them. But preferably, instead of taking out Mark, we could probably take out Dawn or Caleb. That could be a move, because if we align with Johnson's side, we can still take out one of these. However, it gets a little more complicated. Now, talking on Mark's side of the tribe, Mark, Dawn, and Caleb are all thinking in unison, right? And then there's Tez. But we don't really know where Tez is thinking, because 1, he hasn't really received an edit, and 2, he's coming in as this like Survivor superfan, and 3, it appears that he's working with Mark. So we think as a viewer that it's like this core 4 that's kind of happening. We think we think Tez is this like side vote, honestly, here. So they all decide to make the move on Johnson. Mark pulls in Brooke and is like, hey, we're just gonna vote out Johnson, all right? Just do that, okay? And Brooke's like, yeah, we could do that. That's totally cool. And now speaking for Johnson's side, you know, Ben and Blanche haven't really received an edit. It's mostly just Ben Johnson, unfortunately. Didn't really put it in the edit, but they just come to the conclusion that they should just vote out Dawn. Keely goes to Johnson and is like, hey, I want to make this move against Caleb. We should vote him out to weaken Mark. And Johnson, being so paranoid, he's like, what? I don't know if I trust that. Let me go over to my other resources and find out. And so he goes over to Sally, and Sally's like, bro, trust the process. Don't be paranoid. Just trust us. We want to work with you. And so Johnson still doesn't believe it. And so he goes over to Faith, and Faith just is like, bro, shut up. I am going to murder you if you don't listen. When your torch is being snuffed, I'm gonna light you on fire. Like, you better listen. And of course, Johnson, not taking that as a comedic threat, decided not to listen. And that would be the downfall of his game, by the way. But on the other side, Keely actually tells Tez about the vote as like a backup situation, which honestly, I didn't see it as a good move, but I'm only saying that mainly because like at this point in time, we just see Tez working with Mark, but also I feel like there's just some like missing plot elements that we didn't get to see in the episode, so maybe Keely and Tez have more of a connected relationship than we realize at the moment. And so when Tez finds out about this, he's like starting to stress out. He's starting to get paranoid, but paranoid in terms of like, do I actually know the plan? Am I the one getting blindsided here? So he goes to Mark, but he doesn't tell Mark the plan, by the way. He's just like, hey, is the plan actually a plan? And Mark is like, yeah, like, why are you stressed out about this? The plan is Johnson. We've been wanting him out since like the first tribal council, so let's just stick to the plan. And Des is like, I don't know, dude. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Okay, I will just try. So then we get to the tribal council. For some reason, Brooke pulls out her idol. And we know as a viewer, Brooke is safe, but also at a strategic point, I don't know how Brooke thought that she was in danger. Like, given her position in the tribe, like, she has to know that Mark is in, like, such a power position. Why not just take the shot out at Mark? And, like, Brooke knows that Mark isn't targeting her. So why is she pulling out the idol? And so she plays it. It goes to waste, and I'm just like thinking endgame, right? Like, if some of these players on her tribe makes it onto the jury, which is probably very likely at this point, how is that going to look good for you in the future? Like, I need the next episode to see what people are thinking of, but it's just not looking good for her in this moment. I just need the next episode to know what was that thought process. Why did she like technically waste an idol? Like, you can use an advantage and use it incorrectly, but this felt straight up like wasting, to put it that way. But also the other part is, let's just get to the vote out really quick. Johnson goes out 7-4. We had Brooke, Caleb, Dawn, Mark vote out Johnson. We had Ben, Blanche, Johnson, and Tez that flipped to Dawn, by the way. And then we also had Faith, Keely, and Sally all of a sudden voting for Johnson. Now, here's the thing that's really confusing me. With the women with Faith, Keely, and Sally that wanted to weaken Mark and know that Dawn and Mark are working together, why not just take out Dawn? He's not a good challenge person at all. I mean, he complains when he's not heard and all of that. Why wouldn't they take the shot at Mark? I don't know. We'll have to see in episode 7, but I really think it's a huge missed opportunity, and this just gave Mark a whole lot of power into the swap. I think there was a lot of strategic blunders on the Baron tribe. They haven't been at tribal council for 9 days straight, which I think strategically they're losing their prowess. So coming into a swap, I actually think Bounty tribe is going to be really beneficial because they have been playing this game. They have been this pre-swap disaster tribe as a whole, and it'll be interesting to see what these dynamics are. But hey, that is all I have for you on Australian Survivor Redemption. I hope you enjoyed all my pre-swap commentary, but on Monday, I'll be talking more about Australian Survivor Redemption. So, of course, I'll see you guys then.